To make sure 100% that you understand closures now, let's work on this coding challenge number 2. And actually, this one is more of a thinking challenge than a coding challenge. So what I want you to do is to take this iffy here, and at the end of the function, simply attach an event listener that changes the color of the selected h1 element, so this header here, to blue. All right. And that should happen each time that the body element is clicked. So whenever we click here. And what's important here is that you do not select the h1 element again. So just use this header that you have here. All right. So that's all the code you have to write, which is really simple. But the real challenge here is that I want you to explain to yourself or even to someone around you why this works. So as you click the body, the text will change to blue, and so it's going to work, but you have to understand and you have to explain why it worked. And so this is a good exercise because being able to explain something to someone else means that you have understood it yourself. So I really hope that you do this one, even though it doesn't involve a lot of coding, but it's still really important to do this. So take all the time that you need and think about when exactly the callback function is executed, and of course what that means for the variables that are involved in this example. So again, take the time that you need, and I see you here in a minute with my own explanation, basically. So the code that you had to write was simply this. So selecting the body element and then add event listener on click and then this callback function. And then I'm simply changing the style here to blue. And keep in mind that we did not select the h1 here again. I simply used the header variable that we had already selected before. So let's give it a save. And I will click now the body. And indeed, it became blue, and that worked just fine. So why did this work? Or in other words, how does this callback function here get access to the header variable? And one more time, the explanation is the closure. So I hoped that you really explained basically how the closure works to yourself or to someone else. And so in this particular example, the closure is necessary, or it's useful, because by the time this callback here is executed, this iffy, so this immediately invoked function expression, is now long gone. So it has already been executed, and with it, this variable here is basically gone as well, right? So all of that is gone, but still this function here is attached to the body element. And so it's waiting for some event to happen there. And when the event happens, well, then this function here is of course executed. And again, even though the environment in which this function here was created is already gone, it is still able to access the variables that were created in that variable by the time the function was born, so to say. So this is the birthplace of our event handler function here, and therefore the function remembers all the variables present at the time of its birth. We can also say that the header is in the backpack of this function. So that explanation works as well. And you can go even further and deep into theory and basically try to explain how all of this works behind the scenes. But that I already explained you in the more theory lecture, and so I'm not going to go into that again. All right. So hopefully you managed to explain this to yourself, maybe to your dog, whatever. But what's important is that you now understand how the closure works and how and when it appears. So this was yet another great example of a closure appearing. Anyway, with this, we finished this pretty important section on functions. And so in the next one, we will finally build another visual project with a graphical user interface, which is really exciting. So that section is all about arrays, and we're going to build together an awesome application there. So I hope to see you there as soon as possible.